Alright everyone, and welcome back to my channel, um, Lord of the Rings, Tales of the Middle Earth. So this set expansion will be legal starting from this Friday, and that means the cards will be also legal in the upcoming Pauper Pizza, because you can play the cards starting from the day you get your hand on them, and that means that maybe we will able to see those cards even after the right from the start in the probably biggest Pauper event of the year, since the Pauper Pizza will be a 2 days event, meaning that 7 rounds of Swiss will be played on Saturday, and the remaining players will play on Sunday till the finals, top 8. So the ring is no near as strong as the initiative or as the monarch apparently, and the mechanic is clearly underpowered compared to those two. So basically this mechanic is meant mostly for limited and is clearly not good if you don't have some kind of an evasive creatures decks or a swarm deck. And of course, how does the mechanics work? Because it's clear that it's an emblem, but how do you get those ability that are printed on the ring? Well, there are a lot of uh, the Lord of the Rings cards that have an ability or an effect that says that the ring tempts you. So whenever the ring tempts you, you get one of those abilities, progressive, and every time you get a new ability, you still have the previous abilities. So that means that when you get the draw discard ability, you're still keeping the first one, and you are also choosing uh, a new how do you call it, the um, a new creature that that take the name of Ring Bearer, and you can choose a new creature or choose the same, and you can also get tempted by the ring even if you don't have a creature on the battlefield. So it's good that you don't need a creature to get tempted by the ring, but to get the advantage provided by the ring, you still need a creature and you still need to attack with the creature. So I guess that this ability is kind of meant to decks like small creatures that don't want to interact with your opponent board, like Multiple Fairies. So let's take a look first at the cards that rings you, because it's clear that the mechanic works well with aggressive decks. So probably Sleep on the Ring isn't great in a Narcomancer deck. Event out, you can blink your Archmancer and bring back Sleep, the same spell, Sleep of the Ring. So basically you can pay 2 mana to get tempted by the ring. So I guess that you prefer maybe to play this kind of cards in decks like Mono Blue Furies, or maybe some kind of Burst Ephemerate, since Burst Ephemerate has a lot of small creatures. I think a Spirited Companion that can be blinked with Slip on the Ring to get one extra card, and then attack with it. And when you attack with your Spirited Companion, you get to draw an extra card. I think that is kind of good. It probably isn't really great in those kind of blink decks. Maybe it's more sort of white weenie decks where you can play cards like Tuki Reaper, but even Tuki Reaper doesn't seems good to me, because to get tapped by this creature, you need first to kill the creature. So it's kind of logical to kill your creatures when you want to attack with your creatures. And probably is more suited in decks like Mono Blue Fairies. In example, Birthday Escape seems the best kind of card you can play in an aggressive Tempest aggro control deck because you draw one card, so you have the same amount of cards left in hand, and you of course you get tempted by the ring. It's important to note that it's difficult to figure out how to build Mono Blue Fairies if you want to play Birthday Escape because you need to cut something, and Mono Blue Fairies deck right now are just uh, very solid. Most lists are stock lists, so also you need to draw at least 2 copies of your tempting cards to get an effective advantage, since you most time want to just get tempted 2 or 3 times. You don't really need to get to the final ability. Probably the opponent is already dead when you get the chance to have a ring bearer with all the 4 abilities. So I believe that Birthday Escape is kind of very miscreant ring tempting because you don't want to draw too many cards, but you want to draw at the least 2 copies of that card because Vermeer's Grant doesn't do much by itself, but when you have the second copy of Vermeer's Grant in play, you can draw your extra card, and that's the reason why that fairy is the weakest fairy in that deck. And then we have the black version of Birthday's Escape, same thing, but instead of drawing one card from the uh, from the from the deck, it draws one card from the graveyard. And alongside Urik's Eye Berserker, I guess that you may try to fit them in some decks like Mono Black Suicide, because you have small creatures that are cheap, like 2/2 creature with only 1 black mana. Carnofag, probably is the name of that card. And you also play Dark Ritual, so you can be very fast. You can play 3 mana creature with Dark Ritual, and you probably have some benefit as well, like decks like with Winnie or Marble Fairies. But you are more aggressive, you draw cards with Singing Blood, you deal direct damage with Tyrant's Choice or Bump in the Night. So I think we can consider having the rings in Mono Black Suicide. Event Out Mono Black Suicide isn't really a deck right now, and Event Out the ring isn't really great. You also have a lot of other cards, but with the rings, but I think that mostly are just made to limited, and probably they're just not good enough to see play in constructed. After that, I think we should talk about the field mechanic, which is very cool. And I guess that we now have, alongside Codron Familiar, and how pay off eventually to play a field strategy, but we are still missing real engine. So Lambas is kind of good as an engine alongside Golden Egg if you want to get some extra advantage from Codron Familiar, and is better than Golden Egg, is opt under a rock, and the card is good, of course, because Pauper has been for years a format defined by Kursky Fisher and Glintook. I'm not sure how much Glintook and Kursky Fisher may be still strong in the current Pauper metagame, but bouncing rocks, contributing rocks with Kursky Fisher and Glintook has been proven to be an effective strategy. So you can figure out that Lambas can still see play in in a Corsica Fisher deck. Eventually, you can play the same rock in decks like Extron, Altertron, or even Affinity, because you can try maybe to switch some a copy of Chromatic Star or Ichor Wellspring just to play Lambas, because Lambas is better in early game since being able to see the first two cards with only uh, one mana rock without having to sacrifice the Ichor Wellspring with the Dispute or something else. It may be really helpful in early game since Affinity usually only dies through to not finding the third and fourth land usually. So I think that we can try Lambas in different flavors of Affinity, and the card will prove itself to be very good. So I say that we have a really good payoff regarding the food token, the food tokens, but we are still missing something like Witch Oven. And sadly enough, Sirit Ungol Patrol is the most similar thing we have to Witch Oven. Yeah, because it's very terrible, because it costs 5 mana, it's a creature, so you can kill it, and it's very slow since we are playing a format where you play Avenging Hunter or Gauntlet Paladin when you have 5 mana. So I think that even out when you sacrifice the creature, you draw a card. The card isn't playable in constructed. It's just bad. We have then a lot of food generating cards like many partings, which are very good and limited, but in constructed are straight unplayable because they don't do enough. Many partings it's very sad that it search only for a basic land, because if maybe Seagate and other gates were printed in Lord of the Rings instead of the Gillands, that would be very good. And many partings fetching for a gate and generating a food token would be a really good card, at least in decks like Nightgate. So we have Mushroom Watchdogs, which is while the dog that was played in Madness decks. I don't remember. Wild Mongrel, yeah, it's Wild Mongrel with a very weak ability, since you are forced to activate only as a sorcery speed. So okay, just a limited card probably, because we don't even have Witch Oven, so we can't really generate a decent amount of food to a decent and free amount of foods for the Mushroom Watchdogs. We have a Pippin's Brewery, which is another cool payoff for the food strategy, but doesn't really do well with a food deck, since probably a food deck is meant to be a grindy deck, and Pippin's Brewery is just a card made to stomp decks, so nothing's really great. Now we have Revive the Shire. Revive the Shire, I believe that the card is really great. I mean, in the format, Pulse of Muraza is already played, and Revive the Shire could be a replacement to Pulse of Muraza in certain strategies. Okay, it's a sorcery speed, and it get you half the amount of life you get with Pulse of Muraza, but it brings back you any kind of permanent. So besides creatures and lands, you also get the chance to bring back an enchantment like Journey to Nowhere or Pestilence, or an artifact like Spare Supplies or Nihil Spellbomb or Blood Fountain. So it's just great from my point of view. Being able, in example, to bring back a Nihil Spellbomb may give the card some changes to get play in Golgari Control, since the deck play Nihil Spellbomb as an answer in the sideboard to Infinity or other graveyard strategies. And the decks already play some cards like Blues of Muraza and Blood Fountain. Also, when you get the token, this token is an artifact, so you can sacrifice it with Deadly Dispute. So potentially Revive the Shrine can do a lot of stuff for a deck relying both on artifacts and Deadly Dispute. I guess you can also try to play the Shire in mana ramp strategies like Ponza. So decks with Arbor Elf and Uchopi Sprawl. Sometimes those decks play Tsukuraza, but as I already said, you can eventually try to bring back other stuff, not only creatures. Alright, so with a small talk about this cycle of 5 common cards with land cycling. It's important to note that you search for any kind of plains, swamp, etc. Land card, not only basic land cards. So we have the duals in Pauper with the basic type, so you can fetch for them, and also we have cards like Mystic Sanctuary, Witch's Cottage, etc. Well, Mystic Sanctuary was banned, so of course you can fetch for it, but still you can try to play Eagles of the North or the other creatures as a way to get extra land drops from the spells slots, or eventually a way to get some kind of advantage from the card both in early game and late game. An example, LotR Revealed, which is the only non-creature spell in this cycle. It can be kind of good in strategies like Azurus Kogate and Azurus Familiar, because you have an extra land drop, you can shuffle for a card like Brainstorm, and you can recur it with Archmancer. So from a point of view, being able to have an extra land drop index that sometimes may struggle from not having a decent amount of land drops could be very good. Also, it's important to note that you can pick it with Ogre of Bolas or Phalange Archaeologist, so that means that Ogre of Bolas and Phalange Archaeologist may be able then to get you a land, yeah, an overpriced land because you're still cycling the card to get the land, but is still better than nothing from my point of view, because it can generate extra mana, but on the form of the land and by discounting your Tolarian Terror, and late in the game can be 3 new extra cards. So we can, I'm sure we can try to figure out how many copies we can play of this toolbox card in those kind of blue strategies. And well, I'm mostly hyped about the Troll of Chasm Doom in regarding this cycle of cycling creatures, because the mono black decks that cycle a lot of creatures is Cycle Storm, and you know, Cycle Storm plays a very few amount of lands, so a creature that can fetch you a basic swamp or a dual could be really good in Cycle Storm, because it generates mana for songs of damage. It's also a creature that you can cycle to deal damage with the Dranet Pinger creature, and potentially can fix your mana. So Ash Barrens probably is better to not play any more Ash Barrens. Maybe you can just play some tapped dual lands instead of the Paramore and Ash Barrens, and then play a full set of Troll of Chasm Doom, or maybe some stuff like Oliphant or Junior's Int if we splash for other colors, so we can also fetch those dual lands, and hypothetically we can have a better start thanks to the extra lands, and thanks to having an extra creature in the graveyard just to generate more mana with Songs of the Damned. Alright, so last we should take a look at the most generic card printed in this set expansion. Well, Orbit Stings still works with food, but probably the decks that we can play Orbit Stings don't really generate any food of sort, because Orbit Sting is a removal spell, it's a white removal spell, which is not unique but very rare indeed, and it deals damage. Uh, it deals damage. It deals X damage, where X is the number of creatures you control. So uh, there's not any more text written on it, so you don't need the creature to be tapped or to be attacking, which is very great because usually white common removal spells are really bad, and Journey to Nowhere and Unmake are the best removal spells in Pauper because they don't have any conditions written on it. The only one mana removal spell that can be played in Pauper is Sunlance, but it doesn't kill white creatures. Hobbit Stings can kill white creature and also is an instant speed spell, so in my opinion, the card is clearly great in decks like White Winnie or Burst Bully because those decks generate a lot of creatures. You can also try to play it in decks like Azorius Colgate and also in Azorius Familiar, since in Azorius Familiar you can loop it with Ephemerate, which is great because already cards like Digital Evil and Last Bright are very great in those matchups. But the weak part about Orbit Sting is that decks like Familiar, for example, tend to be very weak to very aggressive strategies, and Orbit Stings don't kill fast threats in the first 2-3 games because you need to first land a creature, and you also need that the creatures is being kept alive. So if you're playing against, example, Mono Red Burn or Cool Data Burn, probably the card isn't good because you can't kill a Thermal Alchemist or a Monastery Sweet Spear in the early game. So it's probably a one-off in those ephemerate decks. It can be very good in late game, but in early game it isn't. So I'm sure we can try it one or two copies in the main deck, but nothing else. Then if we have a Wistful Rider, which is a Catar's commando that doesn't have flash and doesn't require extra mana to get to be sacrificed. Of course, Westfall Rider is kind of weaker compared to Catar's Commando because you can activate the ability as an instant speed, as an instant. But if you play, for example, Tortured Existence, the Westfall Rider is currently better because you require a lesser amount of mana to play the card and activate it. So it's just more mana efficient, and for that reason is probably better. Well, probably I'm also the only one playing also Tortured Existence, so I'm probably the only one that think that this card is good. Orcish Medicine is a kind of counter spell when it comes to Dimmer Terror, because if you are, for example, playing against Golgari, you can protect your creature from a removal spell by giving the creature indestructible, and alongside that you can also protect the creature from Chainer's Edict thanks to the Orcs token that you are generating. It's also important to note that the Orc token is black, so the opponent can't kill it with Snuff Out, so probably the card can be really good in the mirror match of the Mirror Terror and also against black based strategies, or maybe even red based strategy. You know, against red decks like Boros, in example, Unexpected Things is really good, but mostly because the opponent is likely to have a lot of Swarm and a lot of burn spells, so it may be better to have a lifelink spell just to not die too fast from the opponent, and also maybe you want to flashback your deep analysis and cast your snap out, so losing too much life is not really great. So Orcish Medicine could be played as one off or two off. Is clearly weaker compared to spell pierce or counter spell, but in the right spot can be even better compared to the counter spell, of course. So now we are talking about one of the best card of the set, I guess, which is Cast into the Fire. So Cast into the Fire is just Fire and Ice plus Smash Shattering Blow. Of course, you choose between one of these two abilities, and it's kind of weaker compared to Fire because you deal maximum wind damage to each up of two creatures, so you can't kill one Ninja of the powers with only one single copy of Cast into the Fire. But the cool part about this card is that if you are playing a Boros deck or a Jeskai deck, Jeskai Ephemerate deck, you can main deck a lot of copies of this card because you can kill some Spellstutter Sprite, Squadron Oak, Secret Cat, or Cool LotR both token, and you can also exile one Mirror Forcer or Blood Fountain. So it's a very versatile spell that will clearly see play in Pauper because it's just do too much good stuff for not being played. Abrade was already a staple, at least until they printed the Modern Horizon 2 dual lands, which are indestructible, so you can't destroy them with Abrade. But Cast into the Fire may be able to bring back decks like Colgate or Jeskai Ephemerate from the slab and make them already again playable thanks to be a very good card against various amount of strategies in Pauper. Herbal Frenzy is just Firebrand Archer, has the same text, the same body, and the same converted mana cost. It's just a different kind of creature, different art, and different name. So now we have improvised club, and it's probably another very powerful and strong card. So this instant, this 2-mana instant spell deals 4 damage to any target, but it requires sacrifice. You are forced to sacrifice a creature or an artifact. Being able to sacrifice an artifact make this card really powerful, and I can't even believe how they printed a card that seems like the son of Deadly Dispute and Galvanic Blast. So in my mind, Affinity with 8 copies of Galvanic Blast immediately popped up, because I mean Galvanic Blast is probably one of the best cards in Affinity. Imagine being able to play more than 4 copies. Imagine being able to be more aggressive. Affinity doesn't seem much play right now because it isn't enough fast, it isn't enough aggressive compared to how it used to be, and most Affinity players used to be aggro players, and Affinity right now plays a lot more likely mid-range or a control deck. It even plays counter spells or Metallic Rebuke in the main deck, and Improvised Club. Well, I mean, you can play it in Cool Dota, in a more artifact-focused Cool Dota build. You can play it in Boros Synth. You can play in any kind of Metalcraft-based strategies. You can play it in Rakdos Madness. Imagine Rakdos Madness casting some spell like Vulnerable Epicure, getting 2 cards that you can sacrifice with Improvised Club, getting some artifacts that give you Metalcraft. Improvised Club will clearly see play in those decks. I'm not sure how many copies, but 2 mana per damage is still a lot of damage. Basically, is not turn 1 Galvanic Blast, is late game Galvanic Blast, and Galvanic Blast on turn 1 or turn 10 is still a great card. Rally the Hornberg is cool because you generate 2 tokens and you give haste to every human you control. So not only those tokens, but I'm not sure how much can be good the card because, you know, the format is already defined by Cool Rebirth and Goblin Bushwalker, and if you want to play Rally at the Hornburg in a cool data strategies, why you are playing Rally the Hornburg, so instead of Goblin Bushwalker, because Goblin Bushwalker gives haste to every creature you control, not only the tokens, and generate extra damage because it also provides a +1/+0. So clearly isn't at the same power level. So I guess you want to play this card in a deck that isn't cool Dota, so maybe a Boros Swarm, Boros Token deck, and maybe you are also playing something like Rally the Feasts or Goblin Bushwalker. So in my opinion, the card isn't really playable right now. Then we have Smite the Deathless, another red removal spell that can be really troublesome for decks like Affinity. Smite the Deathless deals 3 damage to a creature, and that creature loses indestructible until end of turn. If that creature would die this turn, you exile it instead. So, wow, we have another card that can that can hurt a lot. Decks like Kogate and also Affinity. You can exile their Frogmite, their Somber Overguard, or their animated indestructible land, and you can also exile your opponent's Sacred Cat. So, in my opinion, this card is really great. Not only against those 2 decks, you can also exile stuff like Archmancer, Ardent Elementalist, and Multidrifter. So the card could be really great in any kind of mid-range and controlish or red strategies. Maybe Jeskai. I mean, just imagine playing Jeskai Ephemerate with 4 copies of Smite Deathless and 4 copies of Cast into the Fire. Wow. The card could really powerful. The deck could be really powerful against Affinity after this set. I'm not sure how much copies of Smite Deathless we want to play and how many decks who want to play the card, but the card is still great and could really easily see play. Even Farsight instead isn't really great. This kind of effect, in my opinion, doesn't really work well in Pauper because, you know, those green cantrips, when they get you only a creature, they aren't really playable because when you play a creature with a deck which is green, unless you are playing an aggro decks, you're playing a sort of combo deck like elves or wolves. So elves and wolves prefer to play the card like Leader Stampede or Distant Melee because they need a critical amount of creature to win the game. So it's better to draw more than 1 card, and also those spells draw you more cards, and also you don't really have mana issues since you play a lot of mana ramp. So other decks that play green cantrips are decks like Altatron with Uncensoring and X-Proof Buggles with the 1 green mana cantrip that fetch you a land or a enchantment. So in Buggles it's better to the enchantment fetching cantrip, of course, and I'm not sure if you want to play Island Farsight in any kind of already existing deck. Maybe a combo deck that doesn't really require a critical amount of creature, but I mean, I don't really, I can't really think of anything that can really need Island Farsight right now. So the last card is Wizard's Rocket. We already seen Wizard's Rocket as the first common spoiler for the Lord of the Rings, and the card is just Terrarion with a better ability. But the weakest part of Terrarion, the enter the battlefield taped line of text, is still here on this card. So basically, it has the same weakness of Terrarion, but can provide you more colored mana. which means that you are now able to play Creepras in any kind of Urzatron decks, which is cool. But I guess that not so many decks want to play, not so many Fangren Tron or Cascade Tron decks want to play Creeprat, even out tapping 3 or more Urza's Tower, and to activate Creeprat will be pretty neat. Yeah. Fireball at home. So thank you guys for watching this video. I hope I will be able to publish even more English content, but you know, most of my audience just speak Italian and doesn't speak English, or aren't from our areas that doesn't speak Italian. So I'm more focused on Italian contents. I haven't been able to publish a lot of contents recently, so I guess that thing will be better eventually in the near future. So until now, see you.